Good morning and welcome to Mystery Bible. My name is Ken Primus. I am your host. I am back. We actually took a little break to focus on a couple of things. We're shifting the podcast and we're looking for a platform by which we can do some other things and research. It's getting close to which one we're going to decide to use so that you guys can get a chance to see my face. Also, we are doing a few other things as well. I took to finish up. I'm in school as well, so I wanted to continue my study, and I had to use bringing a school within my schedule. It's been excellent. I want to encourage all chase. And so we've been looking at this family as we stopped. We stopped the last time, I believe it was chapter 55, and we ended when the children of Egypt and were rejoicing with this family that was estranged from each other for many years. We talked about the father coming, running, and hugging his son, giving his son kisses. We see that in chapter 55, verse 15. And we have been looking at the Bible, Mystery Bible. We're looking differently. It is my goal. And it's my goal, as I mentioned, to bring outside material so that you and I can have a better vantage point as to the Word of God. Because they did take out a lot of material from the time that Jesus discipled part of Christianity. And Christianity, the Western Christianity, looks much different than that of Eastern Christianity. I kind of do Western Christianity. Western Christianity has a lot of paganism within it and a lot of other beliefs that are all blended together and called Christianity, but that's not Christianity at all. But that's another story. So we've been focusing on this family, and we've been looking at several other sources. Some of those sources that we're grabbing our information from is the book of Yasher. The other sources that we've been looking at is the Legend of the Jews, which we've talked about. The book of Josephus is another book that we've been looking at. The Cedar Alarm is another book that we've been looking at. And there are other texts that I have been pulling from as well so that we can get a better context as to what was going on with these folks that are in the Bible. We're using the Bible as our I guess I would say our main source, but then we're pulling from all these others. And so we're going back and forth between the Bible and all books to kind of get a picture. But the book, it tells us that the book of Yasher gives us a better outlook or a better, vantage point from behind the scenes so that we can understand the reason why they did things. We remember reading the Bible earlier when we were studying with Esau, and Esau came late with the blessing, and we don't know why he came late. But when we looked at this, the book of Yasher, we know that he had a run-in with Nimrod, and he had killed Nimrod, and Nimrod's men were hunting him, so he was trying to hide from them. He had actually cut off the head of Nimrod, and he took from Nimrod that coat that was passed down to Enoch. Was from Adam. This was passed down to Enoch. To Noah. It was stolen from Noah and given to Nimrod. And so Esau has this, and this is a lost thing. We don't know where that is in history today. But let's take a look and see now as we last end, as I said, in verse 15, when it says, "Behold, Jacob ran, and his son Joseph, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. And Joseph also embraced his father, and kissed him, and they wept, and all the people of Egypt wept with them." So that is a beautiful day that this family had a chance to reconcile with each other, and also the surrounding people, the Egyptians, got a chance to partake in that meeting. Verse 16, "And Jacob said unto Joseph, Now I will die cheerful after I have seen your face, and you are still living, and with glory. The sons of Jacob and their wives and their children and their servants and all the household of Jacob wept exceedingly with Joseph. and they kissed him and wept greatly with him. And so this family, many of them have never seen him until this is the first time, because he was a young man when his brothers did what they did to him. And so this is the first time they're seeing him, and I know that they heard a lot about him from their grandfather and great-grandfather Jacob. And Joseph and all his people returned afterwards home to Egypt. And Jacob and his son and all the children of his household came with Joseph to Egypt. And Joseph placed them in the best part of Egypt, in the land of Goshen. And Joseph said unto his father and unto his brethren, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, saying, My brothers and my father's household, and all belonging to them, have come unto, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And Joseph did so, and took from his brethren Reuben, Issachar, Zebulun, and his brother Benjamin, and he placed them before Pharaoh. And Joseph spoke unto Pharaoh, saying, My brethren and father's household, and all belonging to them, together with their flock and cattle, have come unto me from the land of Canaan, sojourn in Egypt, for famine was sore upon them. You have to remember, this family was pretty wealthy as well. The blessing had walked through this family, and so they're coming with a lot of stuff, and the family is growing. So we know that the famine was not just in Egypt, which we studied, and he is now rehearsing to Pharaoh about his family. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Place your father and your brother in the best part of the land. Withhold not from them all that is good, and cause them to eat of the fat of the land. And Joseph answered, saying, Behold, I have stationed them of Goshen, for they are shepherds, therefore let them remain in Goshen, flock apart from the Egyptians. The Egyptians actually looked down on shepherds. They never really understood that. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Do with your brethren all that you shall say unto them. And the sons of Jacob bowed down to Pharaoh, and they went forth from his place. And Joseph afterwards brought his father before Pharaoh. And Jacob came and bowed down to Pharaoh, and blessed Pharaoh, and he then went out, and Jacob and all his sons and all his household dwelt in the second year, that it is in 130 years of the life of Jacob. So Jacob is 130 years old at the Joseph maintained his father and his brothers and all his household with bread according to their little ones all the days of the famine, and they lacked nothing. And Joseph gave unto them the best part of the whole land and the best of Egypt, and they all the days of Joseph, and Joseph also gave unto them and the whole of his father's household clothed garment year by year. And the sons of Jacob remained securely in Egypt all the days of their brother. And Jacob always ate at Joseph's table. Jacob and his sons did not leave the table day or night, besides what Jacob's children consumed in their house. And all Egypt ate bread during the day of the famine from the house of Joseph. For all the Egyptians sold all belonging to them on account of the famine. So this family is getting rich, and Joseph is also making Pharaoh pretty rich. And Joseph purchased all the land of the fields of Egypt for bread on the account of Pharaoh. And Joseph supplied all Egypt with bread all the days of the famine. And Joseph collected all the silver and the gold that came unto him from the corn which they brought throughout the land. And he accumulated much gold and silver, besides an immense quantity of onyx, stone, beryllium, and valuable garments, which they brought unto Joseph from every part of the land when their money was spent. And Joseph took all the silver and gold, and came into his hand about 72 talents of gold and silver, and also onyx stone in abundance. And Joseph went and concealed them in 4 parts. And he concealed one part in the wilderness near the Red Sea, and one part by the river Pethra, and the third and fourth part he concealed in the desert opposite the wilderness, Persia and Media. So we see he's collecting all kinds of wealth, and he's securing it, if you will, for lack of a better word. So he's putting it in Persia, Media, and it says that he took part of the gold and silver that was left and gave it unto all of his brothers and unto all of his father's household and unto all the women of his father's house. And the rest he brought to the house of Pharaoh, about 30 talents of gold and silver. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So we see that he's taking care of his family as well as getting Pharaoh more wealth. day by day as we see what's happening from him. God putting him in place to be a powerful leader for his people and savior to his people and his family, but also in the sight. And God can still do the same for you and with you today in your neck of the woods, as they say. So you and I just have to learn how to walk that walk of faith that we're called to be a land of walking that walk of obedience. I've always had this thing, about the faith ministers, if you will, and prosperity ministers, not the faith ministers, prosperity ministers. The Bible tells us that you have to live by faith. Faith is not a movement, and I've heard people talk about it as if it is not a movement. It is it is the way by which one has to live when you translate from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of God. You have to live by faith because everything in that kingdom is new. And because it's new, what's new? The principles and policies and procedures by which we have to live within this kingdom. And that is why God says, seek ye first the kingdom. So as you seek his kingdom, you're going to gain knowledge and wisdom as to how to operate and live by faith, believing and trusting in him and his word, and that we are obedient. And guess what? When you live like that, you'll be able to live in shipwrecks like Paul did. You'll be able to be crucified upside down and so forth, and still be in the will of God. Stephen was stoned and he was still in the perfect will of God. And so when you have those men preaching prosperity, if you're poor, you're out of the will of God and stuff like that. I told you before, I believe there's a better gospel. The better gospel is that of contentment. The Bible says, Paul says, I am content without money and with how. Why am I content? Folks, he says, for I have learned the secret of my content. And when one is content, you are still trusting and believing God, but you're not allowed that feeling of obtaining wealth to consume. The Bible says, what's the secret contentment? Jesus Christ, it says, I am content. He is my provider, my healer. He exchanged poverty for wealth and all of these things. But there are some of us that are called to go through and some of us to die. But that is, you have to, from your relation to Father. So you have to be very mindful of the prosperity message, because let's take an example of Job. Job, when he had lost everything, he was stripped naked, boils all over his head and all kinds of stuff, and close his kids are wiped out. And yet, he was okay. God was there with him and was complaining and all stuff. And then God had to come and set him straight. And once God set him straight and he saw who he was in relations to God, he looked at God. Who am I? I'm a mess. Forgive me. And the Bible tells us that God told him to pray for his friend. Hey guys, you got to be in a relationship with. So we see that Joseph has been hiding some money, protecting and so forth. And so his family is rich. He had 72 talents of gold, and it says that he hid some all over the place, and he gave Pharaoh 30, gave his family. So as far as those treasure hunters, I gave you guys all the locations so you can find it. Okay, so we see that he tells us that he gave Pharaoh some and he hid some, and let's see where we're at with that. In verse 33, and Joseph gave all the gold and silver that was left unto Pharaoh, and Pharaoh placed it in the treasury, and the days of the famine ceased after that in the land, and they sowed and reaped in the whole, and they obtained their usual quantity year by year. They lacked nothing. And Joseph did dwell securely in Egypt, and all the land was under his advice. And his father and all his brethren dwell in the land of Goshen, and took possession. And Joseph was very aged, advanced in days, and his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, remained constant in the house of Jacob, together with the children of the sons, their brethren, to learn the ways of the Lord and his law. And Jacob and his sons dwelt in the land of Egypt and of Goshen, and they took possession in, and they were fruitful and multiplied in it. And that is chapter 55. And we're going to take a little break right here, back and pick up chapter. Welcome back to Mystery Bible. We're continuing looking at these men, Joseph and his family. We have finished chapter 55 to 6 and reading through. And next week I'll get you guys back into the Bible so you can see in location according to the Bible. And we're going to continue looking from. And as we continue with our study, as we move in the Bible, you guys are going to have fun. There are things, Book of Yasha, creatures about that I believe existed. And, people are afraid of these different, but I have a different, and my belief if the problem that we have in Christianity, Western, and that is why as data is showing up for, if they study the Bible, see, we call it, and Lucifer, they talked about the Anunnaki, so is Sky, so this planet of, and there are many creatures, Leviathan in the book of John himself. He describes, God describes many creatures, how he scales things, doors, his mouth, teeth. It talks about jinns, I think Joe, jinn. So there are lots of creatures, but my God is bigger than all that. In the sense, he is God. He said in the nothing, I am over everything. So any demon, the clash of the Titan, that's about those Nephilim, the first generation of Nephilim. That fought, it was Michael's job to fight at 500 because a civil war amongst them, and they fought against each other. Kids and all, the flood was here. But anyway, let's take a look. But we're going to get to see a lot of those creatures as we move through Asher, and so I'm kind of excited getting. Anyway, and Joseph lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. The days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147. At that time, Jacob was attacked that illness of which he died, and he sent and called for his son, and Joseph his son came. And Jacob said unto him, I die, and the God of your ancestors will visit and bring you back to the land, swore to you to give unto you and unto your children after. Now therefore, when I am dead, bury me in the cave which is in Machpelah. And we know that's in Hebron, where his father bought the property of Canaan near my ancestors. And Jacob made his son swear to bury him in Hebron, and his sons swore unto concerning. And he commanded them, saying, Serve the Lord your God, for he who delivered your father will also deliver you from all trouble. The Bible tells us that God deliver us from trouble. And it was Joshua's testimony said that God fulfill all of his promises, and so God will do the same for you and I. The only difference that you have clashing with is God's timing and our timing, our expectation versus God's timing. And when our expectation and God's timing clash, we've come out of faith. So how do we walk within and release and let go of our expectations as we begin and not focus on expecting anything? We focus on worship. And when we lift our eyes from our expectation, the Bible says something happened to us, we become fully persuaded that God is able to set it. So we see in verse 5, we tell God, and Jacob said, Call all your children. And all the children of Jacob's son came and sat before him. And Jacob blessed them, and he said unto them, The Lord God of your fathers shall grant you a and bless, and may he give you the blessing of your father Abraham. And all the children of Jacob's son went forth on that day after he had blessed them. And I'm going to do some teaching about the blessing of Abraham. You remember that was the blessing that passed all men, and the blessing of Abraham. We're going to look at all that, the blessing and then the blessing of Abraham. So we're going to study them later as we go through the Bible. It's really, really fascinating. And I've told you guys what I believe the blessing is about. It's a combination of God's grace, the divine influence upon the heart, and the benefit that it brings to the believer, and God's protection. And I believe that combination is labeled the blessing, because that combination causes men and women to give us wealth, give us their wealth, basically. We see that in the children of Israel. Moses tells them to ask Egyptians for their wealth and their gold, and they gave it. And the Bible tells us that great favor was upon them. A favor is the same. I use interchangeably. So we see that Jacob is dying. He's calling his kids, his grandkids, and he's getting a chance to say goodbye. And so that's it's a good way to go, don't you think? And on the next day, Jacob again called his sons, and they all assembled and came to him and sat before him. And Jacob on that day blessed his sons before his death. Each man did he bless according to his blessing. Behold, it is written in the book of the law appertaining to Israel. And Jacob said unto Joseph, I know, my son, that thou art a mighty man, for your brethren reign over them, and your sons shall reign over their sons forever. And this was a promise that he was telling them, remembering the dream. So his father is just reiterating what the promise was going to, as far as sons, who that lineage with blessing. And so Jacob said unto Judah, I know, my son, that thou art a mighty man, for the brethren reign over thee, and your sons shall reign over their sons forever. Only teach your sons the bow and all the weapons of war, in order that they may fight the battle of their brother who will rule over his enemy. And Jacob again commanded his sons on that day, saying, Behold, I shall live, I shall be this day gathered unto my people. Carry me up from Egypt, and bury me in a cave that I have commanded you. Howbeit take heed, I pray you, that none of your sons carry me, only yourself. And this is the manner you shall do unto me, when you carry my body to go with it to the land of Canaan to bury me. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun shall carry my bier at the eastern side, Reuben, Simeon, and Gad at the south, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin at the west, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali at the north. Let not Levi carry with you, for he and his sons will carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord with the Israelites in the camp. Neither let Joseph my son carry, for as a king, so let his glory be. Howbeit Ephraim and Manasseh shall be in their stead. Thus shall you do unto me when you carry me away. Do not neglect anything of all that I command. And it shall come to pass when you do this unto me, that the Lord will remember you forever, and your children after forever. And your sons honor each other, his brother and his relative, and command your children and your children's children serve of your ancestors all the day, in order that you may prolong your days, and your children's children forever. When you do what is good and upright in the sight of the Lord your God, to go in all. And you, Joseph, my son, forgive, I pray thee, the wrong of your brethren, and all their misdeeds in the injury that they heaped upon you. For God intended it for thine and thy children's benefit. And, O my son, leave not the brethren of your inhabitants of Egypt, neither hurt their feelings, for I, behold, I consign them to the hand of God, and in your hand to guard them from the Egyptians. The sons of Jacob answered therefore, saying, O our father, all that thou hast commanded, so will we do. May God only be with us. And Jacob said unto his sons, So may God be with you when you keep all his ways. Turn not from his ways either to the right or to the left, in performing what is good and upright in his sight. For I know that many and grievous troubles will befall you in the latter days in the land. Yea, your children and children's children only serve the Lord, and he will save you from all trouble. And it shall come to pass, when you shall go after God and will teach your children after, and your children's children to know the Lord, then will the Lord rise up unto you and your children a servant from amongst your children. And the Lord will deliver you through his hand from all affliction, and bring you out of Egypt, and bring you back to the land of your father, to inherit it securely. And Jacob ceased commanding his son, and he drew his feet into the bed. He died and was gathered to his. And Joseph fell upon his father, and cried out and wept over him, and kissed him. And he called out in a bitter voice, and he said, O my father. And his sons and all his household came and fell upon Jacob, and they wept over, crying in a very loud concerning Jacob. And all the sons together, and they tore their, and all of them put on sack on their loins, and they fell upon their face, and they cast dust upon their head to work. And the thing was told Ashnath Joseph, and she rose up and put on a sack. And she, with all the Egyptian women with her, came and mourned and wept for Jacob. And all the people of Egypt who knew Jacob came on that day when they heard this thing, and all Egypt wept for many days. And also from the land of Canaan did the women come up unto Egypt, when they heard that Jacob was dead, and they wept for him in Egypt for 7 days. And it came to pass that after Joseph commanded his servants, the doctors, to embalm his father with myrrh, frankincense, and of incense, the doctors embalmed Jacob as Joseph had commanded. And all the people of Egypt, of all the inhabitants of the wept and mourned over Jacob, his son, and the children of his household lamented and mourned over their father many days. And after the days of his weeping had passed away, at the end of 70 days, Joseph said unto Pharaoh, I will go up and bury my father in the land of Canaan, as he made me swear, then I will return. And Pharaoh sent Joseph, saying, Go up and bury your father, as he has said, and as he has made you swore. And Joseph rose up with all of his brethren to go to the land of Canaan to bury their father Jacob, as he had commanded. And Pharaoh commanded that it should be proclaimed throughout Egypt, saying, Whoever goeth not up with Joseph and his brothers to the land of Canaan to bury Jacob shall die. And all Egypt heard of Pharaoh's proclamation, and they all rose up together, and all the servants of Pharaoh and the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up from Joseph, and all the officers and nobles of Pharaoh went up as the servants of Jacob, and they went up to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Jacob cried and carried the bier upon which he lay, according to all that their father commanded. So did his son unto him. And the bier was of gold, and it was inlaid round with onyx stone, bdellium, and covering the bier was gold, woven joined with thread, and over them were hooks of onyx stone, bdellium. And Joseph placed the head of his father Jacob, a large gold crown. He put a golden scepter in his hand, and they surrounded the bier, which was the custom of king during. And all the troop of Egypt went before him in this array. At first all the mighty men of Pharaoh, and then the mighty men of Joseph, and after them the rest of the inhabitants of Egypt. And they were all girded with swords and equipped with coats of mail and the tap. And all the weepers and mourners went at a distance opposite of the bier, going and weeping and lamenting, and the rest of the people went after the bier. And Joseph and his household went together near the barefooted and weeping. And the rest of Joseph's servants, each man is ornamented, and they were all armed with their weapons. 50 of Jacob's servants went in front of along the road, myrrh and aloe and all manner and all the sons of Jacob that carried the bier, and the servants of Jacob sowing perfect the road. And Joseph went up with a heavy camp, and they did after the manner every day until they reached the land of Canaan. They came threshing Ashdod, which was on the other side of Jordan, and they mourned an exceedingly great every morning in that. And all the kings of Canaan heard of this thing, and they all went, each man of his house, 31 kings of Canaan, and they all came with their men over Jacob. And all the kings of beheld Jacob's bier, and behold, Joseph's crown was upon it, and they also put the crown and encircled it with crown. And all of the kings made in the place a great and heavy, the sons of Jacob and over Jacob. For all the kings of knew the valor of Jacob and his son. And their report reached Esau, saying, Joseph died in Egypt, and his sons and all Egypt are conveying him to the land of Canaan to bury. And Esau heard this thing, and he was dwelling in Seir, and he rose up with his son, and all the people, and all a people exceedingly great, and they came to weep over Jacob. And it came to pass, when Esau came and mourned for his brothers, and all Egypt and all Canaan again rose up in a great mourning with Esau over Jacob in that place. And Joseph and his brethren brought their father Jacob from that place, and they went to Hebron to bury Jacob in the caves of his father. And they came unto Kereth Arabah to the cave, and they came. Esau stood with his son against Jacob and his brothers as a hindrance in the cave, saying, Jacob shall not be buried, for it belongeth to us and to our. And Joseph and his brethren heard the words of Esau's son, and they were exceedingly wroth. And Joseph approached unto Esau, saying, What is this thing which they have spoken? Surely my father Jacob brought it from thee for a great riches after the death of Isaac. Now 25 years, and also all the land of Canaan brought, and from your son and their seed after you. And Jacob brought it for his sons and his seed after, for an inheritance forever. Why speakest thou this thing this day? And Esau answered, saying, Thou speakest falsely and utterly, for I sold nothing belonging to me in all this land. Thou sayest, neither did my brother Jacob buy this land. And Esau spoke these things in order to deceive Joseph's words. For Esau knew that Joseph was not present in those days when Esau sold all belonging to him in of Canaan to Jacob. And Joseph said unto, Surely my friend sorted these things with thee in the record of purchase, testified to the record with witnesses, and behold, it is with us in Egypt. And Esau saying unto him, Bring the record. All that thou wilt find is a record, so will we do. And Joseph called unto Naphtali his brother, and he said, Hasten quickly, stay not, and run, I pray you, and go to Egypt and bring the records, and the records, the purchase record, and the open record, and also all these first records, in which all the transactions of the birth are written, fetched out. You remember this guy, he can run pretty fast. I mean, he's running fast. If you remember earlier, he ran around the whole area in a couple of days, I think it was, or when they were, the brothers were before Joseph, and his assignment was to go around and count the gates, I believe. And so we know that he's a pretty fast runner, so was again tasked with going and running and gather all this proof. And thou shalt bring them unto us hither, and that we know them, that Esau, the words of Esau and his sons, which they have spoken this day. And we know that that is incorrect. Esau is lying, as it said earlier. And we talked about this when Joseph had him sign all of these things, had witnesses before him. Even with his birthright, there was witnesses there when he sold that, and a few other things. So we know that that is false. And we read that also in the Legend of the Jews, which goes a little more as to what was happening, paperwork. And so we know that this is absolutely crazy. Family is something else, guys. And we're seeing it here, even at funerals, family acts stupid. And we're seeing this man and his family just being absent. Yep, one of those. And so he, 59 says, he hearkened unto the voice of Joseph, and he hastened and ran down to, and it tells that he was lighter on the feet than any of his stags that were upon the wilderness, for he would go upon ears of corn without crushing them. And that was the same terminology said when he was running around. And when Esau saw that Naphtali had gone to fetch the record, he and his son increased their resistance against the cave. And Esau and all his people rose up against Joseph and his brethren to fight to battle. And all the sons of Jacob and the people of Egypt fought with Esau and his men. And the sons of Esau and his people were smitten before the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob slew Esau's people. Esau's 40 people, or 40 men. And Shesam, the son of Dan, the son of Jacob, was at that time with Joseph's son, but he was about 100 cubits distant from the place of battle, for he remained with the children of Jacob's son by Joseph's briar to guard it. And Shesam was dumb and deaf still, but understanding the voice of consternation amongst men. And he asked, saying, Why do you not bury the dead? And what is this great? And they answered him the word of Esau and his sons. And he ran to Esau in the midst of the battle, and he slew the sword, and he cut off his head, and it sprang to the distance, and Esau fell amongst of the battle. Now when Cushan did this thing, the sons of Jacob prevailed over the sons of Esau, and the sons of Jacob buried their father by force in the cave. The sons of Esau beheld it. And Jacob was buried in Hebron in the cave, and with Abraham, which Abraham had bought from the sons of Heth, and for a possession of the burial place, and he was buried in very costly. And no king had such honor paid him as Joseph paid unto his father at his death. He buried him with great like unto burial. And Joseph and his brethren made a mourning 7 days for them. What a testimony of a crazy family. We know that this man Esau and his family were renegades. The Bible says they are. And we saw from many other manuscripts of his heart be cold, and we see that his behavior is no different, and that he waged war at a grave, at a funeral. I've seen crazy things at funerals as well, so I'm sure that many of you. So family is family, and that's what I say as when we started this story. The Bible is a study of family, and crazy, and yet God worked with crazy. So don't worry about your family. God's special in working with crazy. And after it, the sons of Esau who waged war with the sons of Jacob, and the sons of Esau fought with the sons of Jacob in Hebron, and Esau was still lying dead and not buried. So these guys continued to fight. And the battle was heavy between them, and the sons of Esau were smitten, and the sons of Jacob slew the sons of Esau's 80 men, and not died of the sons of Jacob. And the hand of Joseph prevailed over the people of the sons of Esau, and he took Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, son of Esau, and 50 of his men captive. And he bound them with chains and gave them into the hand of his servants to bring them to Egypt. And it came to pass when the sons of Jacob had taken Zepho and his people captive, all those that remained were greatly afraid of their lives from the house of Egypt, lest they should be taken captive. And they all fled with Eliphaz, the son of Esau, and his people, with Esau's body. And they went on, and they came unto Mount Seir, and they buried Esau. but they had not brought his head to Seir, for it was buried in that place where the battle had been in Hebron. And it came to pass, the sons of Esau had fled from before the sons of Jacob. The sons of Jacob pursued them onto the border of Seir. They did not slay a single from them when they pursued them. They carried them, excited their confusion, so they fled. The sons of Jacob turned back from them, came up to the place where they and remained there the next. And so we're going to pick up this crazy family as we come back and learn. So as we move this particular guy, we'll see a Zeppo later on, a creature. I want to thank you guys again for staying with me. Those I've seen stats there, listening, all is well. I just trying to getting back and doing some growing still, and we want a lot more equipment. Different. We want to do both video and audio, and I want to thank all of our financial. I thank you. I really continue to be living, and I want to thank you again. Pray that God teach you, show blessing, do not affect change.